Mykonos, blue ass water, Instagram models. Those are probably the top 3 things you think of when you think of Greece. But I'm here to tell you there's a lot more to this beautiful country than just the Greek islands. So let's kick it off with something you probably did not expect to see in Greece. So now that we got that Nat Geo moment out of the way, let's get on to it.
So we arrived late last night and we're in Greece. It's my first time ever coming to Europe.
We landed in Thessaloniki. I'd never heard of this city before, but we soon found out that it was a lot more than just a little town. It's a beautiful city and it's sprawled all along the edge of the Mediterranean, but it gives you beautiful access to the waterfront, and all along the waterfront there's beautiful restaurants and classic Greek style buildings, and then down to the White Tower. And it was actually a special day in Greece, and I'll put the name of the event that was going on. So there was thousands of students kind of parading along the streets, but it was a super warm welcome into Greece. From here, we headed up into the north. First stop at the Edessa Waterfalls. This basically comes out of nowhere. We were driving through cotton fields and other agriculture crops, and then you come and you start climbing up a crazy winding road, end up at a beautiful restaurant, and then from there, you can walk down into the Edessa Waterfalls. There's about 3 or 4 different sets of falls. It was a super beautiful natural area, and the one set of falls, which I'll drop a photo right now, is very beautiful and gives you kind of that iconic look, and I would not expect that of Greece. So Edessa Waterfalls was our first stop, and definitely one that's worth checking out. From here, we went up into the village of Orma, where at this time of year, which was the beginning of November, they are celebrating the chestnut harvest. So we were there for the chestnut festival, and it was absolutely crazy. So we drove through probably 10 different towns and there was nobody around. And when we finally got to Orma, that's where everybody was. This night, and I guess a few days over this time.
I'm not sure if you can hear that in the background, but there's some crazy local music going on here.
Everybody's celebrating the harvest of the chestnut, and they're pretty much there drinking, dancing, and playing music. So there's probably around 2,000 people in this little town square, in which about 100 to 200 of them at a time were dancing and doing these cultural dances, which I guess have been with them in their communities for a long time, because most people would join in and go and eat and then jump out, and then all taking part at once, aging from like little kids all the way up until I would say 70 or 80 years old were taking part in these dances.
I don't know if you'll be able to hear me right now, but we got the chestnuts that we came here to Orma for. So we're gonna have the first taste here. Basically, they roast them over a fire and then they boil them. So, but here we go. It's very much like potato. I didn't expect it. I thought it was gonna be like a nut, but it tastes kind of like potato. But it's pretty good. It's interesting.
Our second day was one that I was looking really forward to, and that was climbing on Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus is the home to the Greek gods. Throughout history, this is where the Greek gods lived, at the top of the tallest mountain in Greece. This was one of the most surprising parts about visiting Greece, was again Mount Olympus, because it also comes out of nowhere. You're only about 5 to 10 kilometers from the sea, but it just climbs and climbs and climbs, and I'll put the height of the actual peak here, but it's very stunning because the mountain kind of just grows out of nowhere. The little town that we were in, Litoro, I'll put the name also here. It gives you a beautiful vibe of a nice mountain town, and it was also because of the national holiday, it was very lively. So lots of restaurants and everybody out there enjoying and kind of hanging out. But we went up, we climbed this beautiful mountain road, and then we went for a hike with our guide from Hila's Adventures, and they took us basically on a beautiful walk. We got to see a couple more waterfalls along here. And then it ended up at one of the refugios where we could get snacks, coffee, and a couple of things like that. There's a bunch of these different lodges all over the mountain, which allow you to summit Mount Olympus very easily, and there's lots of guides that can give you access to this. We had like such great weather up there, and I think this is one of those spots that if you're coming to Greece and want to see something unique, visiting Mount Olympus and hearing more about the Greek mythology is definitely one of those things, because it kind of encompass all of this history and the mythology that overrides basically the whole of Greece. So it was really cool to learn about that and tie it into the actual location where all those stories come from. I'd give yourself at least a day here at Mount Olympus because there's so much to explore. And after another night in Thessaloniki, we drove about 2 hours north with our rental car to Lake Kiny. This was one of the spots on the tour that gave me probably the biggest surprise of all, because we came there and on our tour we got to see flamingos, which you saw at the start of this video. But to give you a bit more of understanding, we met up with a local guide there that took us on a beautiful horseback tour along the edges of the lake, Lake Kiny, where we got to go in the water, and there's actually flamingos and water buffalo there. So I don't believe water buffalo are actually native to the area, but the farmers had herds of them there, and they're out there on foot just kind of moving them around to graze all day. But when you see flamingos and water buffalo, it definitely seems like something from Africa or something else a little bit maybe more tropical like that. But it was definitely quite a beautiful surprise, especially to get to photograph that. And you saw those videos of the flamingos at the start of this, and I really enjoyed getting to see those, especially in such a unique landscape. We toured along the edge of the lake and then up to one of the churches that is no longer in use, but it's a historical site and gives beautiful views over of Lake Kiny. This landscape in the area was like something, again, completely different than from the other areas where we're at Edessa and at Mount Olympus. It gives you very vast open valley where the lake was kind of flooded in. I don't believe it's a natural lake, but it's created a beautiful site for tons of birds and as well as really great fishing and boating opportunities on there. And from here, you're only, I believe, less than 100 kilometers from the Bulgaria border in the north. So it's starting to get quite mountainous up here. In general, northern Greece is something that I would highly recommend if you want to get off of the beaten path. We only spent 3 to 4 days here, but we got to see quite a variety. And like I said, getting up into the mountains and kind of into the different farmland, you get a whole different appreciation of Greece other than the blue ass water and islands in the south. Well, that's something that's definitely worth visiting, I believe. This gives you a whole nother side of the country, and it gives you access to kind of a bit more of a different variety of landscapes, different types of food, as well as different opportunities for cultural events like the Chestnut Festival. Overarchingly, I found it super approachable to travel around northern Greece. Driving was very easy, and traffic, while in the big cities, was a little bit hectic. As long as you gave people the right of way and followed the flow of traffic, it was very safe, I found. We had a super small rental car, so we weren't burning very much gas, and it allowed us to park everywhere that we wanted. Overarchingly, accommodation was super available. They had hostels and hotels in pretty much every little small town that we went, and the prices were at around North American prices or cheaper. So for $100 a night, you got a very nice room for 2 people. And then for most meals, you were spending around $20 or less in Canadian dollars. So overall, I felt it was very affordable. So I challenge you to get off the beaten path and go see something in some countries that you're traveling to that is not on the hotspot list. Getting into northern Greece allowed me to get a whole new appreciation of the country. And while I haven't visited the Greek islands, I have a tainted view of what that looks like and what I was expecting. Where visiting northern Greece, I did not know what I was getting into, and I was led to see a whole bunch of new surprises and was left with a very positive outlook on northern Greece. And it's definitely leaving me wanting to explore this country even. So get out there and leave room for adventure. Don't plan every little thing, and give yourself some space to kind of be surprised. That is unseen northern Greece.